President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russian commanders of craziness in their efforts to capture the eastern town of Bakhmut. The town, which sits in the Donetsk region, has been the centre of Russian attacks for months. Taking the town would be a symbolic victory for Russia. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defence minister has warned the battle to retake territory from Russian forces in southern Kherson is proving more difficult than it was in the northeast, partly because of wet weather and the nature of the terrain. The area was one of the first to be taken by Moscow in this war and has been at the centre of the fiercest clashes in the last few weeks. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Hugo Bishega, who is in Kyiv for us. Hugo, first of all, let's start with President Zelensky's comments about the eastern town of Bakhmut, describing it as craziness on the part of Russians.
Yes, Sally, and this town has been under heavy bombardment for months in the Donetsk region. The town itself doesn't have a lot of military value, but it would put cities around Bakhmut within reach of Russian artillery. So perhaps it's a strategic position for the Russians there, and would also help Moscow change the narrative that Russian forces are retreating. So the Russians have been trying to seize this town and they haven't been successful so far. But again, President Zelensky calling the tactics there crazy in the east of the country. I think yesterday what was interesting is that we had a rare press conference from the defense minister here, Alexei Reznikov. And again, he said the situation in the Kherson region was more difficult than the offensive in the northeast of the country. He talked about the rainy conditions there, hampering efforts of Ukrainian forces to take back territory in that strategic region in the south of the country. And at the same time, Ukrainian officials are saying that Russian forces are fortifying their positions in the regional capital, Kherson. And obviously, Kherson is one of the 4 regions that President Putin claims to have annexed. So it's very strategic, also very important for the Russians to defend their positions in this part of the country. And again, I think the Ukrainians are warning that a fierce battle for Kherson may be on the horizon as Russian forces are sending in more troops, including recently mobilized soldiers, to defend their positions in Kherson.
And also the civilians who are in Kherson, and as you say, they've sort of been living in terrible conditions now since the beginning of this war, have been told to leave, and many of them have responded to that, haven't they?
Yeah, we had an update from the Russian appointed officials in Kherson saying that 70,000 civilians had been evacuated from the western bank of the city to other parts of Kherson. The Ukrainian forces are advancing along the Dnieper River, and I think the expectation is that fighting may happen on the western bank of the city. So that's why they've urged civilians to leave that part of the country. But again, I think it's incredibly difficult to get a clear picture of what's happening there in Kherson. It's always very hard to talk to people living in occupied areas. There is a news blackout in terms of covering the Ukrainian advances there. So there is a lot of the claims and counterclaims coming from both sides. So it's very difficult to get a clear picture of what's happening there. But it seems that fighting is likely to intensify as the Ukrainians get closer to Kherson.
Okay, thank you, Hugo Bishega, for now in Kyiv for us.